right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Christine Levins. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for Minneapolis Regional Chamber. The Chamber supports the Elevate Business HC initiative and platform in partnership with Hennepin County. It's my privilege to kind of facilitate and welcome everyone to the webinars we've been doing under this program. So a quick little bit about Elevate Business HC. Elevate Business HC offers free advising, other resources to any business or nonprofit in Hennepin County to help build their business and sustain all of their good work. Businesses have access to sorry, I'm trying to switch my slide, of course. Have access to 3 different types of services through the platform. Webinars like this, one-to-one professional services, as well as the opportunity to connect with peers using our peer-to-peer network. So I'm glad you could all join us today. I'll provide you with the website in the chat so you can take a look at all the offerings we have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elaine Rasmussen, who is the main part of the show today. Go ahead, Elaine.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So glad to be with you. I am super excited to be sharing this time with you. Give me just a hot second here so I can bring up my presentation. Let's see here. Okay, let's get here. And I apologize for my cat crying in the background. I'm usually working in the office, but today I'm working from home and my cat is clamoring at the door and wants to be on Zoom because that's the only time he wants my attention is when I'm on Zoom. Let's see. Okay, now we're cooking with gas. Let's get this into present mode. Awesome. And let's go back here. So welcome all of you today. I'm so excited to be here. I know your time is precious. We have a lot of content to get through. I normally do this session in 90 minutes or 2 hours. So we're going to cram a lot. So if it feels like a little overwhelming, that's okay. This session is being recorded. You can go back and listen to it later and take down some of the notes and key ideas that you want to take away. But let's go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about how we're going to spend our next hour together. We're going to do a little bit of introductions. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me. I'm hoping to learn a little bit about you. I'm going to talk about what's happening in our current state and what you might be experiencing in your business. I'm going to talk about what are the different ways to respond to the current state. And then I'm going to give you some examples as well as a process. We won't have time for the activity because we are just doing an hour, but I encourage you to take an opportunity to carve out some time, perhaps this weekend or perhaps over the break next week, and dedicate some time to using the activity. The slides will be made available to you, so you don't have to worry about that. And I'll also make sure that the handout is made available to you so you can work on this at home. But it's definitely going to be something you can use at any point in time throughout the life of your business. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. But feel free to bring in questions in the chat. I'm going to ask Christine to kind of help me. It's a little difficult to see questions pop up while I'm doing the presentation. So if I happen to miss something, I'm going to rely on Christine to tell me that there's a question that's on the spot here. But away we go. So a little bit about Social Impact Strategies Group and Connect Up Institute and the relationship between the two. I think this was billed as maybe Connect Up Institute, or it may have been billed as Social Impact Strategies Group. Social Impact Strategies Group is our for-profit consulting firm. We do consulting around racial equity, social impact, and impact investing implementation. So we don't do DEI training. We don't do social impact training. We're the ones you call after you've identified your goals and now you need to operationalize them. So if you're a company and you're like, hey, we want to look at our hiring practices, we want to look at our retention practices, we want to look at our communication practices, we will come in and do an assessment as well as help you move your Titanic of your organization to do better. Then on our social responsibility side, we have our Connect Up Institute, which is powered by all of the great humans behind Social Impact Strategies Group. And through that, we have an annual conference called the Connect Up Summit. Some of you may have attended. Our last one was in 2020, but we are excited that we are going to be getting geared back up to do Connect Up Summit in early next year. And so we'll have information about that coming out soon. We do workshops, not only in partnership with folks like Elevate and MCCD and NDC and others and the regional chamber, but also we do our own workshops, and we'll be having an announcement about some of those upcoming workshops for Q1 next year. We also do one-on-one advising listening, as Christine mentioned, we are one of the support organizations that are helping with providing you with technical assistance services. And so just know that that's going to be available to you. And then we just offer general office hours. Here is my great team. Without them, nothing is possible. I am not superhuman, but they make me look like I am. So I'm super, super excited. They do a lot of the work on the back end. You may interface with them a lot more than you would interface with me, but particularly with Michelle, she does a lot of the enterprise development, and she's the one leading our Integrated Capital Fund program. So in this short time, I'm going to talk a little bit more about who I am, but I'd love for you to write in the chat box your name. And if you haven't already, put your business name and maybe what's a challenge that you're dealing with. And I'll try to be mindful of that as I'm going through our slide presentations. But some of you may have already populated that, but the people who came in afterwards may not have seen it. So if you could go and post it again, copy and paste is great. Just to let people know what's your name, what's your business, and maybe what's a challenge that you're dealing with in this moment in time. And hopefully we'll be able to address that in our conversation today. Once again, I talked a little bit about what we do, so I'm going to just bypass that. So factors in your pivot. These are really things that you're going to really need to understand before you even think about what is your pivot, right? Maybe it's still in the idea phase of your business. Maybe you're 2 or 3 years into your business. Maybe you're 10 years into your business. And now, as a result of COVID or other circumstances, you are now sort of reimagining what happens now. Maybe you're on the tail end of the business and you're looking to exit. Maybe you're trying to redefine your business. But there are some factors that you want to consider before you even think about actually making the pivot. The first one is, what is this moment in time for you and for your business? And I think all too often entrepreneurs think about this question only as it relates to the business. A lot of the work that we do is really centered on people. You may have heard it called human-centered design. And what that means is you are not separate from your business. You are a whole human that has feelings and responsibilities on top of your business. And sometimes your business might need to ebb and flow in relationship to your humanhood, right? They are not separate. We have a culture that incentivizes them being separate, but that's just unrealistic and unsustainable. But as you think about this moment in time, think about, where are you? Do you need to realign the business? Meaning you are going to be doing the same business, but you may need to be doing your business in a new way, right? It needs to be, maybe you are doing as restaurants, hey, we didn't do takeout or delivery before, and now we're going to be adopting takeout and delivery. We're going to be doing Uber Eats. We're going to be doing Postmates. That's what I mean by you're doing the same product, but you're realigning how you might have to deliver that product or service. We might need to do contactless delivery. What does that look like? What does that mean? What are the resources that are required for that? The second opportunity is maybe you have to pivot completely, right? And I'll talk about some examples of organizations that had to make a hard pivot, right, as a result. So nail salons, restaurants, a lot of the in-person businesses had to really do a pivot in order to stay in business. You might need to add services, take services away, because now those services are actually meaningless, right? When we think about what happened with Blockbuster, for those of you who are old enough to remember, you actually had to go to a place to get videos. Blockbuster and Netflix were kind of in the same business. Netflix was in the on-demand at a kiosk location delivery system. And they both had the same information. And look at what Netflix did. They were able to turn that around. And now not only are they a streaming business, but they're a content creation business. For those of you who are nerds like me, I think the figure is 68% of what's watched on Netflix are actually international. They're from the content that's watched is from another country that's not the country where the subscriber is. So I find that that's fascinating that they were able to make that pivot, but Blockbuster was not, the epic fail, right? And a third opportunity is, get your crap together. This world slowed down over the last 24 months. This is a great opportunity to be like, what do I want to be doing? Do I still want to have this business? Do I want the business to function in a different way? Do I need to get my back office in order? Do I need to hire more people? If I hire more people, do I need an HR plan? Do I need job descriptions? Do I need instruction manuals? What are all those things that are internal to the business that actually make the business run better? This is a great time to really go look inward and figure out what does the business need to grow? What does the business need to be able to survive and be able to do what it needs to do? Do I need more process manuals? Do I need clearer direction on how each person's roles and responsibilities are? Do I need an accountant? Do I need a bookkeeper? What do I need to actually buy more time back in my day so that I can continue to strategize on how to grow the business? And maybe it might be a situation where you might need all three of these, right? So, but it's really important for you to identify what is happening and where do I want to go? What do I want to do in this moment in time? Then the next thing you really want to be clear about, what type of business are you? Are you a products-based business? Are you a service-based business? Or are you a hybrid business? And the reason why this is important is because the tactics that you need to realign, pivot, or get your stuff together really is going to be different whether you're a products-based business, a service-based business, or a hybrid business, right? So we saw with co-working spaces, it wasn't legal, literally, to be in space together. So then what does a co-working space do, seeing that part of what they deliver is not just the real estate, creating a space in real estate, but also it's the service. People are coming there for an experience. They're coming there because they want peace and quiet away from their cat and dog scratching at the door like mine are right now. But these are things that are going to help you decide in what way are you going to realign, pivot, or get your stuff together. Then the next thing that's really important to have a clear understanding about is, who is your customer? Are you what's called a B2B, which is business to business? Social Impact Strategies Group, we're a consulting firm and we service other businesses. We don't service individuals, right? We service an individual who may own a company, but primarily our business structure is B2B, right? We are delivering a product or service to another business. Sometimes that's called an enterprise version. You may, if you have an online platform, you have a enterprise version, which is available only for institutions or for larger organizations. Maybe you sell your product in bulk. If you do janitorial supply services, you are selling directly to a business. You're not selling to a customer that's going to have this in their household, right? Once again, B2B needs and requires very different strategies than what's called B2C, which is business to consumer. And that is when you are actually directly selling your customer to the person who's going to take it home, right? So if you are selling body butters, if you're a nail tech, if you're a barber, these are things that are direct to the consumer. The consumer actually picks up that tab as opposed to a business picking up the tab. And yeah. So here are some of the basics that you are going to need to know, regardless of whether you're going to realign, you're going to pivot, or you're using this moment to get your stuff together. The first is, you have got to continue to keep your customers engaged. You can't just fall off the radar and be like, oh, I'm going to be over here figuring out my pivot, figuring out getting my stuff together. You still need to be in communication with your customers. Now, that can look in 1,000 different ways. That could look like, hey, we're taking the month off. We are going to come back to you in a month and tell you about all the great new things that we're doing. It could be that one of the biggest complaints I heard, particularly of people of color-led businesses, is that customers were disappointed because they were not communicated about the delivery times. I had a good friend of mine who was like, she was ordering something from a Black business. The delivery time stated on the website was 4 to 6 weeks. 8 weeks had passed. Nobody had contacted her. She hadn't received an email to be like, hey, we're having some supply issues. We just want to let you know it's probably going to be another 4 weeks for your product. I know it doesn't feel good to send those emails, but I promise you, your customers, while they might be a little frustrated, they'd rather hear that than nothing from you. So you've got to continue to keep your customers engaged, even if it's just a newsletter, even if it's just a regular email. You don't have to have fancy pants things to be able to communicate to your audience, but say, hey, just want to let you know we're having some supply issues. Our delivery times are going to be a little bit longer. We really appreciate your patience. If you have any problems or issues, please feel free to contact us at XYZ, info at whatever your ABC Acne business, right? The other thing is you've got to be still considering where are you going to get new customers, right? And if you are realigning or pivoting, what does that look? What do those new customers look like? Where are you going to find them? How are you going to reach them, right? The third thing that you've got to have your handle on is what are the unique offerings that you're going to offer? If you're in the body butter business, you are competing with a lot of people. So are you going to be bringing out a brand new fragrance? Is there something unique about your particular, you're doing an organic brand, or an organic product launch? Are you doing something, what are you doing that's going to be unique to your particular business, right? And once again, it's full circle, let your customers know, right? So what are some options, right? So we've talked a little bit about some of the options, and some of the options are, take your services online. If you are, and let's say you provide business education services and you're used to doing that in person, well, here's an opportunity for you to possibly take that online, right? So maybe that's what you need to do, is take your products and services online and create some digital content, right? Doing delivery or curbside pickup, right? If you have a brick and mortar location, saying that, hey, guess what? Let your customers know, you know what, you can just come pull up to the front and we will have somebody bring it out to you, right? Offering gift cards or prepay or layaway, particularly if you have a service-based business. Doing prepay is a really great way to regulate your revenue stream. If you get people paying like, hey, we will provide you with 2 hours of coaching or 2 hours of services, and for 3 months, it costs you $500. You could do that, right? Giving alternative options to pay. PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, Venmo. I remember before the pandemic, I was in a nail salon and I didn't have any cash on me because who carries cash anymore? And so I forgotten to go to the bank to get cash. Actually, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just going to pay with my credit card, but they really didn't want credit cards, which I understand. But I said, but I don't have cash. I said, well, can I Venmo you? And like no one there knew what Venmo was. And I'm like, people of color, we really need to adopt technology. I know we have fears and trepidations about technology, but we really, really need to adopt technology. It's just going to make our life easy. And I'm not saying use technology to replace your customer exchange experience. I'm saying use technology so that the customer exchange experience that you have is more meaningful and to the point and efficient and effective, right? But once again, I'm going to keep hammering this point home. Keep your community engaged and uplifted. Say, hey, we're doing great. We just want to let you know this is what's happening. We hired a new person. Like, people want to support you and people want to hear about the good things that are happening in your business, right? But also be transparent, like I mentioned before. If you know your delivery times are going to be they're going to be delayed, you don't have to necessarily say, well, give the whole story of like, well, my cousin was supposed to pick things up and, then their kid got pneumonia. And so like, they don't need to know the whole story. Just say to the point, hey, we have been impacted by supply chain issues. The delivery of your product is going to be a little bit longer than we had anticipated, and we are expecting it to be in 2 weeks later. Give some kind of time frame so people know what to expect, right? So I'm going to give you examples of what each one of these looks like. What does it look like for a business to realign? What does it look like for a business to pivot? And what does it look like for a business to go inward and start to think about their infrastructure? So the first example will be realigning. So here's one of our local entrepreneurs. Some of you might know Coach Val. So before, Coach Val was doing all of her coaching, her training in person. She was doing Zumba in the park. She was doing events at North Market, but all of her events were in person. And then COVID hit, and here comes my cat. Sorry about that. She really could not do in-person event. It was literally illegal for her to host these types of events in person when the pandemic first hit. So she started doing things online. right? And as a result, we coached her through, when she came to Connect Up, we coached her through that process of like, how do you get online? How do you deliver online? How do you create a payment process? What's the process by which you secure that you don't have people coming in who haven't paid? Or if you're going to offer free sessions as a teaser to get paid sessions, what does that look like? The post-COVID opportunity is, hey, you know what? There is going to be a demand for mobile fitness. People very much like, what is it? Safe Light, they will come to your home, they will come to your office to change out your windshield, right? What would it look like? I can tell you, as somebody who used to travel a lot, before the pandemic, I would travel and I would go to about 16, 17 conferences a year. I would love to have a trainer who I could call to work with me when I'm visiting a different city, right? Or maybe you're just like, you need somebody to come to your house, maybe you have ambulatory issues, maybe you have childcare issues. To be able to have mobile fitness would be a great a pivot for her. Doing on-demand fitness, right? Creating a whole cadre of material where people can access different kinds of classes online in your own sort of learning management system that people could access, like Teachable. If you're not familiar with Teachable, it's a learning platform where you can put your classes online and people can access, the public can access them. You know, I told her, I said, you need to be the next Black Peloton. That's what you need to do, right? But you can also create a certification program, right? People are at home, they're looking for something to do. They might be looking for a career change, especially with the great resignation that we're experiencing. People might be looking for something else to be able to pivot in their own life. So now let's talk about what a pivot looks like. So one organization or one business called Olive and June, before COVID, they were a high-end nail salon. Once again, COVID came, it was illegal for them to be open. So during COVID, they came up with a Mani boot camp. They created this video content on how to properly do a manicure at home. Now, you might say, oh, well, if people learn how to do a manicure at home, they're gonna stop going to the nail salon? I will tell you, as somebody who does get manicures and pedicures, and I did take some of their Mani boot camp, I'm still going back to get my Mani and pedi done someplace else. I want somebody else to do it. It's one of my guilty pleasures. So, you know, will there be some people who don't go back? Absolutely. But the reason why people go to a salon is for the experience. So as long as you are creating that experience and you're fulfilling whatever your experience that you're delivering, people will come back, right? But in the post-COVID opportunity for them to sort of pivot the business is creating an online university. They actually created Olive University, and now they have all these different kinds of classes that people can take, right? Licensing options. So Olive and June is now a brand name, right? What about other nail techs who want to get into the business? This is the way for them to get in by having a known brand name behind them, and they become a franchisee or they become a licensee of the brand. They can also begin to offer a certification program, right? Their own sort of certification program of like, this is the Olive and June way, this is the Olive and June experience, and you can create this experience in your salon while keeping your own brand name, right? But it's really training you how to give optimal customer service. What are the processes and the procedures that your organization needs to do to be able to do that? Another local person is Nail Ninja. Once again, this is the nail artist that was pre-COVID. During COVID, to keep money coming in the door, she created a manicure box. And so you could go onto her Instagram and you could purchase this manicure box. It would be shipped to you. And so now that she's created a whole new audience, right? Not only her current customers, but she's probably created a whole new audience. She has an opportunity to decide whether or not she wants to go into a freestanding brick and mortar shop, or she could also go into online education. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about what does it look like to go internal and start to figure out what do you do? So that I will just give you my own personal story at Social Impact Strategies Group. You know, the consulting work slowed down. People were like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what's going on. So it was really an opportunity for us to really think about what are our business processes and let's get them down. Let's get them out of my head. Let's get them out. Let's get the institutional knowledge that's living in our staff's brains and actually get that down on paper so that as we hire people, we're not spending so much human time in training, but that, hey, here's a process. As long as you can read, you can do this process. And if you have questions, now we're using our human capacity to answer questions as opposed to actually training. Right. And that way the time is far more meaningful and far less distracting because the person is asking a very pointed question instead of spending an hour and a half on training them on something, right? You've got to think about how are you using your time? How are you using your staff time? What is the most efficient thing to do? What is going to reap the most return on investment for time that's spent? And return on investment is not always financial, right? Sometimes return on investment is I have more time to be at home with my family, right? That's a very important one. So now we're going to talk a little bit about, let me just be mindful of time here, okay? We're at halfway point. This is perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about, now that we've talked about what are all the things you need to think about before you even start this process of pivoting, realigning, or getting your stuff together. I'm going to walk you through a process by which you can do this, right? So the process, you may have recognized this is adapted from the Lean Business Startup Canvas, right? The Lean Business Startup Canvas is for you to take an idea, fill in all these boxes, and it really helps you think through your idea and whether or not the idea is viable. So we've just adopted that tool to create, how do you make your pivot? This is a worksheet to support your pivot. And the way that I'm going to walk you through how it actually works, excuse me. So first, what this actually came out of, we right after COVID, we were hosting week-long boot camps, and we were helping businesses actually pivot their business in 1 week. We helped them figure this all out. So this is actually a 5-part series, and we're cramming it into an hour. But one of the first things that we asked people to do was just generate a list of ideas. Just make a list of ideas. Don't judge the ideas. Just go into free form, writing down what your ideas are. Once you've done that exercise, now we want you to pick one of those ideas, just one. Maybe it's the one that gives you the most energy. Maybe it's the idea that you want to wrestle with because it feels like it's the most complicated. Maybe it's an idea around, maybe it's the one thing that seems to be the easiest to think through, or it's the most thought through. Whatever it is, pick one idea. That's it. And we're going to play that idea out through here, right? So then once you pick that idea, you're gonna print this sheet out. And like I said, I'll make sure that this one pager is made available to you. You're going to actually write on here what that idea is. And now we're going to actually work this idea all the way through the worksheet. So the first part is, what's the idea and what are maybe some possible backup plans, right? This is the idea, but maybe here are some derivatives of that idea or alternatives of the same idea, right? It's just so you can kind of keep it in the back of your mind while you're working through the rest of the worksheet. Then think about the why. Why is this the idea that you think is going to be the thing that actually helps you? What is the goal? If you do this idea, what will happen? And what will it help you achieve? Is it going to help you achieve more revenue? Is it going to help you achieve getting more staff? Is it going to help you be more efficient in training your staff? Is it going to help you get into a new market, a new segment, a new group of customers? What is the idea going to do? And you'll see on here, I'm like, be specific. I think a lot of times, not only in our culture, and particularly in this place, we're very ambiguous. And I'm going to ask you to be super, super, super specific, right? Because the clearer you can be, that's how you can start to see when the idea may not work out, right? But if you kind of keep it up 10,000 feet in the clouds, then you're not being able to see how things impact the next thing that you're going to be doing, right? Then so once you've gone through the why, then you want to move on to, okay, so who's the target audience for this, right? Let's just take an idea of, let's pick somebody from the crowd. Let's see, did anybody put in the chat something that, what they're wrestling with or what they're thinking about? And maybe we can use a real life example. Yes, thank you, Christine, for dropping in here. Make sure they drop in the question. Does somebody, you can just come off mute. We've got a small group here, so just come off mute if you're wrestling with something right now as far as what you think you might want to either pivot to or realign the business. Does anybody have anything?
I'm scrolling through the chat here. Katie recently acquired a company and we're doing all three. Oh, they're using all three of your tools.
Okay.
Let's see. Hiring is a trouble
Hiring.
point.
Okay.
Should we take
So
that on?
you know what? Well, let's take it on.
Okay.
So we're going to take on hiring. So the idea is, let's see, we need to, you're thinking, let's, for argument's sake, you need to hire 3 people, right? So that's the idea. The idea is that we need to hire 3 people. Why do we need to hire 3 people? Well, if we hire 3 people, we would be able to lighten the workload of the staff that's already here, preventing burnout. We also want to be able to, by having these additional staff, 2 of them will be salespeople, 1 person will be an admin staff. So those salespeople will be able to ideally generate an extra $10,000 a month each, right? I'm just going to swing from the fences, right? So who's the target audience, right? And this is, in this particular situation, let's think about 2 parts of that. One is, where is my optimal place to find these employees, right? Because clearly you're going to be looking for maybe a certain type of employee, a certain kind of background, a certain kind of experience that a person has, or maybe no experience, right? But that's going to help you determine where you're going to look for these people. The other part of it is how is that person going to fit into your organization? Your organization, whether you've thought about it or not, has a culture, right? And you may have heard the term culture eats strategy for lunch every day, meaning that you can have the greatest strategy and the greatest plan, but if you've got a piss poor culture in your organization, your strategy is never going to be executed. Right. And the opposite is true. If you've got a great strategy and you've got a team that has a very strong culture, they're very tight knit, they're very clear and transparent and communicative, your strategy is going to be excellent. Even if the strategy is poor, that group of people are going to make sure that the strategy gets better, right? So who's the target audience? Who are you trying to reach? It will help you understand where are you going to look for these. And what is the key message that you want to communicate about the folks that you're going to be bringing in? Is the key message that you have really flexible work hours, that you provide childcare, that you have health insurance, that you provide health insurance? What's going to be that thing that's going to be able to distinguish you when you are messaging out to folks to look for people to hire, right? So now that we've gone through key messages, the next thing is, okay, so what is our key metrics? How will we know that we were successful? And I think this is another highly, highly overlooked thing, particularly for businesses of color. We think that we've done the thing and that's all we need to do. And that's important. It is super important that you actually do the thing, but also you need to make sure that the thing actually worked. Right. And this is boring. And so that's why it's important to hire somebody who likes doing this part. Right. It is very hard to find good workers. And I will talk a little bit about where you should look. Is going to depend on what kind of role you're looking for and what kind of industry that you're in. So Marlon, if you can answer those 2 questions for me, I might be able to give you some tips on where you can look for some folks, but I'll give you some general tips on where you can look for people. So key metrics, how will you measure success? What does success look like? Does success look like that your employees stay for 6 months, right? Because we just talked about finding good workers, right? Is a metric that that the person comes on and within 90 days, they're able to start their job with very little support from you, right? What is the metric of success? Will it be that when this person comes on, that they start generating sales within 120 days? Or maybe it's, in 90 days that they have generated their first sale, right? If you're bringing on somebody on your sales team or business development team. But identify what could be the metrics of your particular idea. Then we want to move on to, okay, this is Marlon's question of where do I go, right? How am I going to find these people? What are the channels that I'm going to use? We've identified my target audience. I am looking for, let's just say I'm looking for 2 salespeople. and I'm admin person. I know that they are in, let's see, what kind of business? What was your business again, Marlon? I'm sorry, I forgot. Let's see. I'm trying to see if Marlon put his business in there. But let's say, you're actually looking for entry level talent, right? You're like, hey, I'm on a budget. I can't afford to pay somebody $100,000 to be on my business development team. So with that being said, where should I be looking, right? Maybe where you should be looking is, if you're looking local, maybe you should be looking at graduate school students. Maybe you should be looking at students who are about to graduate. Maybe you should be looking at, I was just telling one of my colleagues today, they're trying to hire some accounting people for their team. They do charter school business management. And so I said, another great place is, if your city, many city colleges have certificate programs, and even state colleges have certificate programs. So connecting with that department that has certificate programs, if they, like, I know that Century College has a certificate program around bookkeeping and accounting. People are, especially in this great resignation, are looking to change their careers. They're taking the time to actually shift into the career that they may have always wanted to do, or been wanting to shift out of the career that they're in. Okay, so Marlon has a meal prep and catering service, right? So in that case, students might be the best thing, because you need people who have different off kind of schedules, right? That they're not necessarily 9 to 5. You might want to find people who, if there's a culinary school, that you get connected to the local culinary school. We used to have one here. I don't know if we still do, but are there going to the high schools that have some kind of culinary like connection to them? I don't know if we have any in the state, but going to the incubators and accelerators that are in town that are specifically around food, they might have a network of people that you can plug into as far as hiring and things like that. So that's what we mean by channels. Of, like, in this particular instance, if it's a product, if you're like thinking about, you're looking at a product to launch, then you want to be thinking about, okay, what's the best way to reach those people? Where are my customers? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they prefer email? What's the place that they prefer to be met at? What are some other supports that you might need? Do you need to have some printed materials? Do you need to do a mailer? Do you need to do flyers? Maybe you want to go deep in the community and hire from within the community. So maybe you need to print some flyers and put them out on the streets, on the telephone poles, and in the local hangouts to get more people, because you're really trying to make hires within your own community, right? Then you need to think about, okay, so if this idea of hiring people, 3 new people, 2 salespeople and one coordinator or one admin person, what is that going to cost me, right? Because if you're getting a salesperson, they're not going to be able to just turn around and create sales right away. So what's your runway, right? And how much are you going to need to invest in them to get them ready, right? So you have a clear understanding, because after this exercise, you might find, hey, you know what? I really can only afford to hire one salesperson and one coordinator. I can't really afford to hire that second person. So getting a clear idea of what this idea is going to cost you, right? And what is the return on investment to come back? Sorry, I need to let my cat out. Bye-bye, see you later. The pleasures of working from home. So think about, what is the revenue stream and when that revenue stream is going to happen. So if you're like, hey, if I hire this business development person, over the next 60 days, it's going to cost me $10,000. But if they're really good at their job, they actually are going to generate $20,000 in sale within 60 days after that. Well, now you've got a return on your investment. You've made your money back. But it's important for you to really think this through ahead of time, so you know what you're getting yourself into. And then finally, who is responsible for this idea or the components of the idea? It may be you. It may not be you. It might be you and your admin person. So in the case of Marlon, maybe it's like, hey, I've got somebody who's part-time, who's my admin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write the job description, but I'm going to ask her to post it on ZipRecruiter or to the colleges, and I'll have him or her do that piece of it, right? I'm going to I'm going to ask my sister, who's a graphic designer, to design my flyer that I'm going to post at the college college campuses. I'm going to add, who are the people to support all the work that you put onto this sheet? All the things that need to be done, who's going to be responsible for those things so you can be really clear, right? Now, once you finish putting this all together, now you can take a step back and you've got this filled out and you'd be like, okay, now that I've thought through this, what makes sense, right? Because I imagine once you get through this process, you will have these moments of enlightenment of like, oh, wow, I didn't consider that, or I didn't think about that, or, you know what, actually, based on this, I can hire 4 people. That makes more sense, right? And I'm going to be hiring people around the sales team. I might as well just hire them all at the same time, and I'll have, because it's only going to cost me X amount of money to bring them on. Why don't I just bring on another salesperson? So once you get through this, you'll hopefully have some moments of enlightenment, and it might be moments of more questions. You might figure out that there's more things that I don't know that I need to know, right? The other thing that's really great about this sheet is that you can use this sheet for every idea that you have. And then I always recommend people like fill out the sheet, step away from it, fill out another sheet, step away from it, fill out another sheet, step away from it, and then bring them together, bring all 3 of them together and look at them from a 10,000 foot view level and try to look at them objectively. And you're like, because the lowest cost option may not be the option that you want to use, right? So don't be so much reliant on like, oh, I'm going to choose the option that's the cheapest, right? Because that may not have the return on investment that you need to have. But by going through this exercise, you at least get a lens of what are all the things that are involved in that particular idea, and does it make sense for you in this moment? That doesn't mean you can't execute the idea at some time in the near future or the long-term future, but it's that you have some sort of understanding and scope of the scale of your idea and what it's going to require to actually execute it. So I see there's a question.
Yeah, Elaine,
yes.
there's a question from Marlon. Can you talk about how do you know when to hire, and is there a kind of a formula to think that through if the moment is now?
That is such a great question. I feel like it's the $100,000 question. Unfortunately, Marlon, I do not have a silver bullet for you, but I will share my own personal story with you, and hopefully this is helpful. When I first started my business 5 years ago, I quickly, within 6 months, was overwhelmed. I was like, there's so much to do. I need some help, but I'm not bringing in enough money to like bring someone on full time. But I need something. I need help. So I got this stroke of genius, or this inspiration, and I was like, okay, what can I afford? Let me start there. Once again, going through a process very similar to what I've outlined for you, like what help would be exponentially helpful? Like if I were to make a hire, the hire that I need to make needs to be a hire that would exponentially give me time back in my day, right? What would those hires be? So I really thought about it, and I realized there were 3 hires that I could make. The first hire was a project manager to help me with the clients and managing their projects moving forward, right? Just to make sure like emails were followed up on, making sure that proposals got out on time, making sure that if the customer the client had a question, that they answered it, or they made sure that I answered it, right? The second job was an associate producer for my podcast. My podcast was growing. People really wanted more content from me. And I'm like, I can't manage that on my own. The third hire was a social media person, a part-time social media person. I was like, I really need to start getting out there and having a social media presence. And I don't have the time, the bandwidth, or really the interest to do it, right? But I was spending a good amount of time managing our social media. I'm like, so if I can pass that off to somebody else, that would at least give me probably at least an hour or 2 back in my day every day. So, right, you think about if you have an hour a day, if you make a hire that gives you an hour back in your day, that's 7 hours at the end of the week, right? 7. So that's just 1 hour a day. If you get somebody to take something off your plate for 1 hour a day, that's 7 hours now that you can go do something else, right? That's on growing the business. So once I did that, I then went through the process of writing up job descriptions. I'm a big fan of manifestation. I said, I'm going to write the job exactly how I would want the person to come into the company. And all 3 of them were part-time positions. They weren't full-time positions. Then I went through the exercise of like, okay, if I had an amount of money to pay, what do I have? And I came up with a number. It was very arbitrary. It was like, this is what I'm willing to part with, right? And it wasn't a lot. It was not a lot. It was, I will tell you this, it was less than $4,000. I said, this is how much I have for this role or for one of these roles, right? Any one of them would help me, right? So once I went through that exercise, then I was like, okay, I just kind of like let it go. I just kind of like put it out in the atmosphere. I wrote these job descriptions. I didn't even post the job descriptions. Within about a week or two, I'm at an event and I'm talking to the caterer, and we were just like another Black woman. I'm just chit-chatting with her, and her sister happened to be helping her with this event. And so the woman who was the caterer, she's like, oh, I gotta go, I gotta kind of get set up. And so I was left there talking with her sister. So I was like, oh, well, what keeps you busy during the day? I hate the question, what do you do for a living? I hate that question. So I always ask people like, what keeps you busy during the day? Because not everybody works a job, right? But there doesn't mean that they don't do stuff. So I said, well, what keeps you busy during the day? And so the response to me was, I'm a project manager for the Department of Corrections. I was like, say what now? I was like, this is divine intervention. So I said to her, I didn't want to scare her off. So I was like putting on my best game face. And I said, well, would you like to have lunch? And she said, yeah. Took her out to lunch. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I asked her to tell me a little bit more about her experience, telling me what she did, what she liked doing. Did she like project managing? Well, who is she project managed before? So finally, towards the end of the lunch, I said, okay, here's the deal. I said, what's your rate? She told me what her rate was. I said, here's the deal. I can hire you part-time for 4 weeks at your rate, or I can hire you half of your rate, but I can hire you for 8 weeks. What that will allow me to do is to buy some time so I can close some deals that will allow me to keep you on longer. And she's like, well, I don't know. Let me think about it. I said, absolutely. You should think about it and let me know. Call me in a couple of days. She called me back in a couple of days. She says, I will work for you for half my rate for 8 weeks. And from that point on, I was able to do what I needed to do to bring in more business. She ended up staying with me for 3 years. And she went from part-time to eventually coming on full-time, but she stayed with me for 3 years. So I know that that's not really an answer to your question, Marlon, and I'm sorry. But I think what my point is that, one, get creative about how you hire, right? Get clear about what you need to hire. And once you find that your utilization or your capacity is at its max, that's an indication that you need to hire. And then it just becomes a matter of making sure that the hire that you make is strategic, has some kind of return on investment, either in time or in money, right? That either the person's going to be bringing in money, or they're giving you back time so that you can go and make more money, right? Those are my decision tree around this. And I know we're running out of time here, so I hope that answers your question. We've got, looks like let's see. Okay, it looks like that's done. All righty, so I would say that we were going to brainstorm, but we're not going to do that. We're running on time. So we just want to open it up in the last 8 minutes. Questions. That was a great question, Marlon. I really appreciate it. Any other questions about anything we've talked about here? Or maybe there's something that you're wrestling with that you would like to address. I'm happy to talk about that.
Don't be shy. You've got a great resource here.
Let's see, I think there was another business in the chat. Morgan Smith, represent small businesses and people of color. Okay, illegal sounds like that's a legal firm. Awesome. Morgan, is there anything that you're wrestling with?
Well, Katie, it sounds like you're in the middle of quite a few different pivots at different stages. We got a new message here.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you. Morgan doesn't have anything right now. Devin, thanks for jumping in. Really appreciate the perspective on these different opportunities. That means you're doing your job, Elaine.
Love
Katie,
that.
how
Love
about
that.
you? If you'd like to ask any questions. Well, do you want to, maybe if we don't have some questions, do you want to take us through that exercise? Or at least get started and provide some context on how people can do it on their own time?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, here's somebody who's asking a question. When looking for funding, where do you suggest folks start? That's a good one. Everybody
It
needs.
is a good one. So once again, I always like to work inside out. So one, getting an idea of like, how much do you need? What are you going to use it for? Right? Once again, is it something that's going to get you more time, or is it something that's going to bring in money? Right? Is the expense going to, so let's just say for a product-based business, you need to buy an equipment. You need to buy a piece of equipment that's going to increase your production, which is going to increase your sales, right? That's an investment of that's going to get you more money, right? You may need to hire a business manager to manage the client base. While they don't necessarily bring in money, they're giving you time back in your day because you're not doing that, right? So I think it's really important to get clear about what is the money for, how much do you need, and then from there, that helps determine what kind of money you're going to go after, whether you're going to go for an investor, whether you're going to go to a community development financial institution like MCCD or MEDA, because the terms for each of those different kinds of money are going to be different. So it's really important if you're doing, if you're trying to get money for a piece of equipment, that piece of equipment is something maybe you pay over time. So if you get money, you want to be able to have money that you can pay over time, right? That's incongruent with how you're going to be making money off of that piece of equipment, right? So it's really about aligning the type of money with what the money is going to be used for, because not all money is good money, right? I would not necessarily go to an investor to buy a piece of equipment, right? And it depends on the equipment. Like I sit on a social enterprise, I sit on the board of a $30 million social enterprise, and we had to buy a $1.1 million extruder, which is injection mold plastics, right? So for us, like where we went to get money was very different than if you were needing $75,000 to be able to just get some working capital for your next purchase order, right? So once again, it's not a silver bullet. It's a very complex question based on your industry. There might be places that you can go that are industry specific. They're typically investors are usually going to be industry specific. If you're going to look for an investor or an investor partner or a silent partner, an investor is going to be a silent partner versus whether or not you just want straight debt capital, right? Whether it's from a CDFI or from a bank, or if you want to use something more creative like new market tax credit, which is a whole nother thing we won't get into today. But you're funding, so Johanna is funding for real estate investors. I want to do fix and rehabs. So there are actually special structures that are set up for real estate, and there's lots of books on this, but essentially you can create these limited liability partnerships for each project that you do. So let's say you Johanna, buy a block and there are 4 houses on that block. You could actually create an LLC for each one of the projects, each 4 of those homes, and take on different investors for each one of the projects. And because each project has its own LLC, you're able to manage the bookkeeping, the return on investment for each one of them separately, but then they can all fold up into maybe a larger organization. So there's some very different structures around real estate that don't necessarily apply to a business or service-based business. A great resource for you would be LISC. I think that they actually are running a real estate developer cohort, and I think the city of Minneapolis also has a real estate developer cohort. They go into all of those intricacies of all of that. So wanting to be mindful of time. Yeah, we've got 3 more minutes here. How do you strategize on finance? That's such a great question. Davin, I hope I pronounced that right, Davin or Devin. So strategizing around finance. The first thing that you must do is have some finance, right? And I say that like tongue in cheek, but oftentimes entrepreneurs are keeping their books on spreadsheets or notepads or something else that is not cannot do fast calculations, right? And you need that transferred into a mechanism where you can do fast calculations, so you can test. You can start to stress test. If I ramped up my revenue goal, which meant I need to hire more people, so my expenses are going up, does that make sense, right? And by putting it into some kind of digital place, you can start to like manipulate the numbers to see how they relate to one another. So really, one, having a clear understanding of what your finances are, and that you are not commingling your personal money with your business money. You should have a separate business account for anything related to your business. You should not be using your personal credit card for your business. If you're using it for business, it should just be for business. So getting really super crisp and clear around what the finance structure of the business is. Then, no worries, Marlon. Then what you want to do is you want to be able to get some understanding of what even is a profit and loss statement. How do you read a profit and loss statement, right? And that's a report that you can generate at any point in time in the business, but certainly at the end of the year to understand where did all the money go, right? That's basically a fancy name for where did all the money go? How did you use the money that came into the business? And so from that point, what you want to do is then you can start to strategize of like, what do I need in the next 2 or 3 years? And seeing where your finances will support that and where it doesn't support that. So I know we're at time, and I feel like I think it looks like there's 3 more questions. Let's see, do we have 1 more minute? I can maybe look at these and see.
I think one of the things that might help with some of these questions around CPAs and bookkeeping for this group is that we have access to all the folks that can help you do this. One of the things about Elevate Business HC is that we have professionals who can help you start to set up your bookkeeping system, who can advise you on some of the things that Elaine has been describing. And those services are at no cost to you. You have 25 hours that you can spend with one service provider that can really be quite helpful in terms of financing, purchasing, all of these types of things that we're talking about today. So Elaine, I think you teed us up really well. I'm going to quickly drop the Elevate Business HC. Actually, it's just elevatebusinesshc.com. Go ahead and type that in. Take a look. You can just click on the homepage, look at the advisors. You get descriptions of what services they provide and how to connect with them. These are all services that can be provided to you through Elevate Business HC. Go ahead.
I'll just have one more thing and I'll close this out here. So Marlon's question about what do you suggest we use to keep to do the bookkeeping? There's some great ones, depending on, once again, depends on the business. There are oftentimes bookkeeping platforms that are business specific. So if you're in construction, there might be a bookkeeping system that's for construction companies that understands the complexities of your business. Bench is a good one. Harvest, if you do services, it's part of the Google Suite. Google Suite has lots of bookkeeping, basic bookkeeping services that you get for free as part of your Google Suite. But I would definitely look for something that's industry specific first. And if you have something that's more generic, like you do consulting and general consulting, QuickBooks is always good, but there's lots of Google services that are free. So, but thank you so much for all of your energy and your time. Thank you, Christine, for making this happen. I'm definitely available. I'm on the Elevate. Myself and my team are on the Elevate website, so definitely go there and use these services. I can't tell you, people do not take advantage of it. Take advantage of the service. It does not cost you anything.
Absolutely. I'm going to echo Elaine. Thanks for all the energy and the questions. I just love it when people get over their shyness and use what's available to them. So thank you all very much, and have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.